I've told Anil at the beginning of the forum that we are here to provide commentary to what he has just said. And I'm surprised that after listening to him, I'm actually right. We're going to provide commentary. I'm going to provide commentary to what he has just said. First of all, allow me to begin. I've seen Dr. Arifin Omar, who is a close friend of Penang Institute and a senator from Penang. But allow me to begin with two stories from the Bible. This is, after all, an interfaith forum, and I think I have to qualify myself by bringing in this religious element. But anyway, okay, the first story, these are two stories. Both stories, the first story is about the beginning of civilization. The second story is about the beginning of the church, both from the Bible. The first story is quite a famous story. It's about the Tower of Babel, found in the book of Genesis. This is a story, as I said, of how civilization began according to the Bible. A very long time ago, humanity was speaking the same language and shared the same culture. In other words, there was a lack of diversity. And then one day, somebody had a very brilliant idea. Why not build a skyscraper? That guy must be a politician or a contractor. But that was the first mega project recorded in history in the Bible, of human history in the Bible. The plan was actually to build a tower so high that it reaches heaven, believed to be the dwelling place of God. The people, because of their unity, because of their similarity, one culture, one language, they become very arrogant and wanted to be like God. And God obviously didn't like the idea. So God said they are very proud, their unity made them forget who they are, their strength made them forget who they are. So the Bible said God confused the language of the people. The first skyscraper project failed because and was abandoned because people began to speak different languages. In other words, they have different opinions. In other words, diversity emerged. Okay? This is the first story about diversity. The second story, a lesser-known story, it is from the New Testament in the book of Acts. This is the story about how the church was started. Slightly more than 3 months after Jesus was sentenced to death as a political rebel by the Roman Empire, the superpower of that time, the Jews in Jerusalem were celebrating what was called the Pentecost Festival. It is actually a Jewish harvest festival. Tens of thousands of Jewish pilgrims came back from all over the known world, from Europe. They had moved to Europe, from Asia, from Africa, came back to Jerusalem for pilgrimage for the Pentecost Festival. You can imagine the noisy, narrow streets of Jerusalem and filled with excited pilgrims, and all of them were speaking in different languages of their adopted homeland. In the midst of that excitement, on that day, a small group of disciples of Jesus were gathered in a small room in a house in Jerusalem. They were obviously very scared because their leaders were just sentenced 3 months ago to death by the Roman version of ISA, or rather a crime against the Yang di-Pertuan Agong of Roman Empire. So they were obviously very scared. There were so many people downstairs. They were praying, and I think prayer is often, from my observation, even in politics, prayer is often the best thing a small oppressed minority can do. I remember once in a by-election in Bukit Mentajam, I saw a group of Muslim women. They were praying along the street because the opposition or the other party, they had engaged this thuggish-looking youth in their beret, and then they were like, looking very like a bullier. But on the opposite side of the road, this group of Muslim women were praying. So this Jewish disciple of Jesus Christ, they were praying, obviously very afraid. And then suddenly, God sent His Spirit like a wind blowing into the small room and empowered the disciple. And when the Spirit of God came to them, the Bible says, the disciple was suddenly re-energized with a fresh passion to speak about the message of Jesus Christ. So they began to come down from their hiding place and went to the street and began talking about Jesus Christ and the message that He preached. But the interesting thing about this is not that they suddenly regained this bonus, but all of them were not speaking in their mother tongue. They were not speaking in Aramaic or Hebrew, the language of their people. But instead, they were speaking in foreign languages that they have never learned before. This is obviously a miracle in the Bible. So they were speaking in the languages of the Jewish pilgrims, languages of the European people, of the Asian people, of even probably Arab. But this time, you can see, there was a confusion of language, just like Babel, there was a confusion of language, but this time, although they were speaking different languages, all of them were speaking the same message of love preached by Jesus Christ. Why do I tell this story? Firstly, as I said, I need to qualify myself. This is an interfaith dialogue. I thought I should share something from the Bible, but this will be the only two stories or reference to the Bible. But secondly, and more interestingly, and perhaps even counterintuitively, I want to propose that our religious tradition have always preferred diversity, or to put it more mildly, have never see diversity as something bad. Take a look at the famous verse from the Quran, Surah Al-Hujurat, verse 13, where God said, "O mankind, we have created you from a pair of men and women in diverse nations and tribes, so that you may know each other." Is that correct? So our religious tradition, Quran and biblical, and perhaps other religious traditions that we have not explored, do not think as diversity as a bad thing. In fact, from the verses I quoted, diversity was God's creation, no less. And notice in the Quran, God did not say, "I created you so that, all this diversity, so that ultimately you may have unity," but rather so that we may know from one another, to learn from one another. Hence, I want to invite us at the beginning of this discussion to rethink this whole discussion about trying to achieve unity in diversity. Religion aside, do you notice that hatred for diversity, hatred for plurality is often a very consistent trait in authoritarian society? Look at dictators from the European colonies to Hitler to Mao Zedong. All of them hated diversity. They always like to promote unity as if it is the ultimate best thing. But we are in fact a nation afraid of differences. The moment our politicians see diversity, they begin to propose solutions as if diversity is a problem. This should actually go along. Okay. Okay, next one. Go back to the second one. The other one, back. Yes. The moment our politicians see diversity, they are very quick to propose solutions as if diversity is a problem. We often hear calls for, especially in Malaysia in recent time, we often hear for calls for the people to be one nation, one people, one country, one Malaysia. Or even calls for kerajaan perpaduan. Or for the people to set aside your political and ideological differences so that we can be united or bersatu, whatever that means. As it were, to be different and to express differences cannot be tolerated in an authoritarian society. To be different is problematic for those in power, because when people are different, they are difficult to manage and control. It was Lenin himself who said that trust is good, but control is better. But when I say Lenin, don't think that diversity, hatred for diversity is a strictly communist thing. Even in a capitalist society, it is easier. The goal of capitalism is basically a single market, singularity, a common market. It is easier to produce a single product which fits everyone. So this preference for unity cuts across ideological line in authoritarian regime. In fact, I want to go a step further. How even, I wrote it in my book, how even the most progressive in us sometimes cannot bear with diversity, cannot bear with differences. So much so that we tend to see others not in the diversity of their uniqueness or their character, but rather in the pretext of respect and tolerance. I told Anil, I love it when he said we should just forget tolerance. In the pretext of respect and tolerance, we often reduce others into fellow human beings. Sounds okay, but think harder. What is a fellow human being? A fellow human being is, we are trying to make others to become like us, so that we can learn them more. This is as good as colonizing others. It is as good, if we are not careful, it is as good as creating our neighbor in the image of our own self. Okay, counterintuitive as it may sound, I want to propose that the solution, or rather to discuss how shall we move forward the solution to the chaos of diversity is not simple unity or simple tolerance, or even more tolerance, but rather it is in politics. I know all of us hate politics, but counterintuitive as it may sound, I want to propose that perhaps politics is the way forward. We must get our politics right, because ultimately, what is politics? Politics is managing diversity. I have 4 points. First one, at the individual level, we must realize that human beings are multi-dimensional. We must not allow our government to impose on us a single-dimensional identity. What do I mean by this? Today, you are either a Bumiputra or you are a non-Bumiputra. You are either pro-government, whether Pakatan or Barisan, or you are anti-government. But what about the other aspect of a human individual? For example, Fadia, Anil, and I, we may be from different ethnic groups, but perhaps we will cheer for Lee Chong-wei or Nico David. Fuad and I may be from a different political party. We may disagree at one level, at one dimension, but both of us may love to eat durians. So human beings are multi-dimensional, and I think we must allow for this multi-dimensional identity to emerge. Secondly, next slide. We must be bold enough to promote greater democratization of culture. What do I mean? In Malaysia, for example, we see that the whole country is now taken hostage by West Coast Malaysians. For example, Malays in the West Coast sought to impose our category of Malayness to everyone in the whole of Malaysia, even Sabah and Sarawak. But are the Malays in Perlis and Selangor similar to Malays in Penang and Kelantan and Terengganu? Is it? There is an attempt, I believe, to reduce the rich multicultural identity of the Nusantara society into one single category, Malay. But do we now hear today about Acehnese or Balinese, Batak, Sudanese, Bugis, Dayak, Minang? These are the rich Malay subgroups, or the Nusantara subgroups, which has submerged into this one broad category, Malay. So I'm saying that today we should encourage the emergence, the re-emergence, celebrating this diversity, this richness of our historical culture. If you go to Indonesia, you will soon discover that despite their proximity, the Batak in North Sumatra is quite different from the Acehnese in Aceh. And definitely very different from Javanese and those in Jakarta. We must celebrate these rich, colorful threads, which will eventually weave into a very beautiful fabric of the society. Thirdly, we must encourage and allow for the creation of different polarities in the society. What do I mean? In other words, we must encourage diversity, to encourage differences of cultures and subcultures and opinion to emerge. We should celebrate diversity. This at least will remove the tensions of bipolar competition between Bumiputra and non-Bumiputra. When we realize that we have more differences within our own self than between us, then we realize that the tension of competition is removed. When we realize that the competition is actually not Bumi and non-Bumi, but there are so many other polars or many other facets of our identity which we can work together with or which we can compete in, then it removes the tension away from this very singular bipolar society that we are in today. There's a very interesting paper which my colleague, Dr. Wong Chin Wat, he's not here, a fellow of Penang Institute, has pointed out to me when I was sharing with him this point. This is called the Federalist Paper number 10. These are some of the documents written by the founding fathers of America trying to argue for federalism. So this paper number 10 said that, I think it was Hamilton, if I'm not mistaken, said that the founding of America, the Republic of America, we should encourage the formation of a large republic, of a large country with diverse demography. Why? To prevent, I paraphrase it, to prevent the easy ganging up of certain groups to bully another group. If you have different polarities, if you have different subgroups, it is more difficult for a leader, an authoritarian leader, to group everyone together to bully the minority or to bully another group. So encouraging diversity is actually, to me at least, is a very strategic political move to prevent ganging up. And finally, politics. We must offer politics. I want to avoid using the old term, emancipatory politics. Even I am still trying to find out what does it mean. So I'm using this very lame term, good politics. This is what I use in my book. In the book I said that the answer to all bad politics around us is not no politics, but rather good politics. Why do I say the answer lies in politics? Allow me to quote from this feminist philosopher, Wendy Brown. The retreat from a more substantive vision of justice is part of a more general depoliticization of citizenship and power and retreat from political life itself. This is ultimately a rejection of politics as a domain in which conflict can be productively articulated and addressed, a domain in which citizens can be transformed by their participations. In other words, we no longer see politics as an arena to solve the problems of the society, and we remove politics altogether from the people. So much so that we allow the experts, the politicians, to do all the political stuff for us. And when that happens, we are in trouble, because we are allowing them to do what they think is right. And often we substitute political action for toleration, for tolerance. Let me give you an example. In today's Malaysia, the problem of economic and political inequality becomes the problem of race and culture. One is rich or poor or powerful because of one's race, not because of the economic injustice. And the solution we are given to this problem of race is that we should tolerate one another. We should ultimately be united. We should be sensitive, jaga sensitivity, kaum lain. The classic example again is national slogans asking everyone to be one people, one nation, one country, one Malaysia, etc. The problem of inequality becomes, the political problem of inequality becomes the cultural problem of intolerance. Instead of solving problems through political actions, through making better economic policy, for example, through institutionalizing justice, we solve problems by asking ourselves or the people to be more tolerant of one another. I started by saying diversity is a good thing. And some of you may be thinking that I'm advocating a chaotic society, but I do not think that there is no way for us to be united. I'm just saying that simple unity is something that dictators and authoritarian society prefer. But we can have commonness. I think at this point, we are underestimating the universality or the commonness that can be offered by good politics. Allow me to end my discussion with two illustrations. The first one, I'm quoting from one of my favorite philosophers, Slavoj Zizek. When he was commenting on the Tahrir Revolution, he said, "Here we have a direct proof that freedom is universal, and proof against the cynical idea that somehow Muslim crowds prefer some kind of religious fundamentalist dictatorship. The moment we fight tyranny, we are in solidarity, no clash of civilization. We all know what we mean. There is no miscommunication here." End of quote. At Tahrir Square, when the people were faced with a tyrant, they became aware that only by working together, they can deal with the crisis. It is well documented that Christians and Muslims and people of Egypt were united. They joined hands in solidarity because all that mattered at that moment was the goal of the revolution, no longer the differences of one another. Even those of us who were watching the crisis or the demonstration from afar from television, we soon realized that we too are in solidarity with the protesters at Tahrir Square. That as they demanded freedom and justice against tyranny, we too felt the solidarity with them. That, I say, at that point, we become part of the human family. The second example is closer to home, and I'm glad Aning has shown pictures of Bersih and Himpunan Hijau. I've always liked to say that one of my first dates with my now wife, then girlfriend, Jory, who's here today, was to the November 2007 Bersih gathering. Yeah? At that time, Critics claim that per se was actually a Malay agenda. Only the Malays were interested, only the Malays were present. Yeah, we were there, but and I acknowledge that the overwhelming majority of those who were there at per se 1 was from Malay community. But then we saw per se 2, per se 3 in Punah Hijau, and begin to realize that the demonstration crowd began to reflect the demography of our country. You see Malay, Chinese, Indian, and for those who are in Sabah and Sarawak who couldn't attend per se gathering, what did they do? They organized their own local per se gathering. There is no miscommunication here. All of us understood there was solidarity among Malaysians as all races demanded for free and fair election. You see, we can be united along the lines of good politics. Nothing again, politics which deal with freeing. As I said, good politics is a term, is a lame term I'm using to replace this old term, emancipatory politics. But basically it means politics which deals with freeing humanity from oppression. And I love to say that this is actually the politics of intolerance, not tolerance. Because we are dealing with the universal intolerance of injustice, universal intolerance of human oppression. There is no miscommunication. We are united in our intolerance, not tolerance. Thank you very much.